why doesn't Israel send fuel as aid to the Syrian people, heating fuel for the winter?
Yeah.
With a simple message like, hey, our common enemy, Iran, used to provide your government with fuel. Well, congratulations on ejecting Iran. This is our way of helping the Syrian people go through this tough winter. And we hope for peace in the future. These small gestures matter a lot. In a time where, there's a lot of conferences about Syria, but aid is yet to flow.
We're going to do things a little bit differently.
Sure.
I want you to introduce yourself.
Hazem Algabra, former senior advisor at the State Department, born and raised in Syria, actually, but been in the U.S. since 2000. First time in Israel, loving it. My only regret is not being here a lot sooner than this.
Hazem, welcome to Jerusalem.
Thank you.
It's amazing finally having you here in studio, and what a time for you to be visiting Israel for the first time, right in the middle of marking the end of this 15-year-long war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, the incoming ceasefire going into effect to release those hostages. I just want to get your first reaction. And what has it been like for you coming here for the first time in the middle of a war of all times?
Interestingly, you do not feel it in the streets. You still see hope. You still see happy young people against all odds. This was what struck me initially when I came here. You walk by a pub, Syria pub in Jerusalem, one of these beautiful places all over the city, and you see young people interacting, and you see the diversity here. You see an Ethiopian person with an Arab Israeli person, with a couple of Jewish people, all sitting together talking. It's a very young country. I don't think a lot of people realize how young Israel is, the average ages. And there's a lot of hope. That said, also, there is fear. Israel, unfortunately, remains surrounded by adversaries and enemies. And, this is what I came here hoping to change, maybe just a tiny, tiny bit. But I think, it's time to look at the whole region differently. There's so much opportunity here. These young people need the opportunity that only peace can bring. We hope for peace in this region. That's all we do here.
We definitely hope for peace. Yeah. I think it's so difficult to think about the possibility of peace when we're looking at this ceasefire deal. A lot of, opposition here in Israel. People are saying it's a terrible deal, but we had to take it. We had to take it in order to bring back those hostages. When you see the situation in Gaza, I want to get your immediate reaction to this deal that's been signed with Hamas, and also the way that you see the future of Gaza, because the minute that this deal was signed, we're already seeing Hamas claiming that they've won the war.
Yeah.
They're back on the streets of Gaza, and it seems like we're back to October 6th.
Listen, we were expecting them to declare victory no matter what happens. This is what they do. It's a much weaker force, but it's a cunning force, and they do not care about civilian casualties. They do not care about their own casualties. They can always recruit more young people. You have a whole, technically a country. It's under Hamas governance. It's a whole place with poison of the mind being injected daily. So it's easy to recruit for them. And they don't care about, what happens to babies, what happens to... there's a tunnel network under the whole city. And even,
it's bigger than the New York subway system.
Yeah, that's what we heard. And, even their own commanders and Hamas officials and leadership, they say, it's not our job to provide for the people. Our job is to dig these tunnels and fight. And this is a self-proclaimed governance of Gaza. So you have it's a problem. But let's go back to the deal itself. Everybody agrees. And everybody knows there was never going to be a good deal. Hamas from day one knew what they were doing, getting hostages, and they understand that the Israeli people and government values life in a different way than what the Hamas leadership does. So they understood the value of what they have. The best phrase I've heard so far, it's not a good deal, but it's good to have a deal. If you are in Jerusalem, you're meeting the hostage families, even the deceased families. You understand why it's important to have this deal. You understand the anguish, the social anguish in this town, among not only the families themselves, but the average Israeli person walking around the street wanting this to be over, at least for the hostages to come back. But that said, Sarah, everybody understands this is a battle and a war. This is not going to end the war. The war is continuing because Hamas wants the war to continue, and they will continue to offend till Hamas is gone. And this is the one thing we need to continue to. This is what the U.S. and Israel agreed on from day one. We need to continue the commitment to the idea that Hamas has no future in the region. That cannot be forgotten. That is the promise.
In your eyes, how much did Trump influence this deal? And do you think that Trump will have the proper influence needed in order to truly change things here on the ground?
We need to look at this as a diplomatic exercise, right? There's no direct relationship between Israel and Hamas or U.S. and Hamas. There were, mediator and middlemen, specifically Egypt and Qatar. My opinion is, from what I've seen and heard in Washington, there was obviously never enough pressure on Qatar and Egypt, the two entities that were able, and somewhat Jordan, to pressure Hamas. And that continues to be the case. Trump's main task should be to put more pressure on the entities that can pressure Hamas. Because direct military pressure is helpful, but I think political pressure is more helpful right now, especially when they're looking at rebuilding of Gaza and some kind of more sustainable options in like phase 3 of the deal. If we need to look at that, then we need to look at different strategy, pressuring Hamas. But again, it's a tough, it's a tall order to tell Hamas you need to disband yourself. So the military pressure needs to also continue to make sure they're suppressed enough for that to be on the table to begin with.
How much has your understanding of the region and this conflict changed with your visit here?
Whoa, how many hours do you have? I'll tell you, on a good day, 90% of what we hear is incorrect. There's
this when you're saying what we hear, you're saying from the State Department
in Washington, there's so much misinformation.
Yeah,
and anti-Semitism has transformed to something a lot more complex, and it's not only hating the Jewish people or Israeli people or anti-Zionism. For the sake of that hate, it became a political tool for some entities.
Yeah,
it became a way for random people on X to gain followers. It became,
it's a sick manipulation, and it's so pervasive and out there.
Absolutely, but it has a life of its own right now, which is very dangerous. It became a way for people to profit. It became a business for some people. So this is, why, we continue, you and I, talking about how do you combat that, the growing beast that is feeding on anti-Semitism.
In Israel, we call it asbara,
of course,
which translates roughly to explanation, which is also kind of a weird name.
Weak. It's a weak name,
right? And so that's my question to you. Are we doing it right?
Okay, let's look at it from a military perspective. If you want to, Israel understood at some point that it needs to upgrade the F-16s to F-35s to maintain supremacy, military supremacy and strategic supremacy. If you look at Hezbollah, it's as if Israel never upgraded from the Mosin Nagants from 1948. and they're still like, shooting these, old World War II rifles. It's a problem. What's interesting is people are realizing the problem right now. When I talk to ministries here, especially ministries that are involved in the Hezbollah, everybody understands there needs to be something beyond, better. I invite you guys, and this is something me and Dan Diker, the head of the JCFA, fully agree on, is the American approach of thing, which is not Hezbollah, is Hashpa'a. It's influence.
Yeah.
The real problem is how much misinformation there is. Your adversaries are on television, on X, on social media all day saying, "Oh, Israelis are a bunch of
it's an apartheid state."
Not only that, but East Europeans.
Right.
If you need to come here, see the diversity here. From the Knesset all the way to the streets and the schools and.
Just walk around the market, walk around the shuk, and you'll see the diversity.
Muslims are oppressed. You walk down the street, you see a lot of veiled women, Muslim women, walking, shopping, like everybody else. There's you don't see those exaggerated problems you get on social media. Unfortunately, we can't bring everybody to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
It's a small city. It's obviously the city would love more tourists, but it's very hard to bring everybody here. So how do you show the reality of things? And also beyond just explaining and showing, I think now we need to look into what we call hashpa'a, influence operations. How Israel can spread its wings and be able to interact with its neighbors, with its environment. At the end of the day, Israel is a Middle Eastern country. So this is a very American concept, hearts and minds. In the U.S. we use aid, we use our, political influence, we use our political support, even military support to influence, our friends and adversaries. Israel needs to get with that program as well, starts influencing and being more involved and message better. There's a lot of bashfulness, again, hashpa, explaining. It's a bashful act. No. There needs to be very forward, very vocal. Again, today, Israel is a superpower in the region. No other country in the whole region has from a military perspective, a nuclear arsenal, a stealth fleet. So the military is well under control. But how do you phase shift from military victory or multiple military victories over the past year into being able to influence and, harvest the fruit of military victory?
Yeah. You actually led a roundtable discussion here at the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs to introduce a working paper to both the Israeli government and the incoming U.S. administration on the situation in Syria, where you basically say, like you said, Israel is a regional superpower. It's time to extend a message of peace to Syria and rather than alienating them and introduce some sort of economic collaborations. Correct. What are you thinking?
So it's simple. Right now, the biggest issue in Syria, as the whole social discourse happens, and the Syrian people try to understand what they want next after 55 plus years of single-colored governance and dictatorship, technically.
Yeah, oppression.
It's going to take them time to figure out what they want politically. But what we know what they want is economic relief. And there's amazing economic compatibility between Israel and Syria. So why don't we look at that option? Throughout history, this region has seen wars for thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
Way before Israel ever existed, way before Syria ever existed, way before much of the things we see here ever existed. The one thing that always worked in this region is trade. There'll be two factions warring here and traders from these two factions doing business on the other side.
Yeah.
So why don't we look at that, historic success story of trade and economic collaboration in this region and make that a stepping stone toward peace?
It sounds nice in theory.
Sure.
But realistically, I can imagine that the attitude towards Israel is rather hostile. Is it still the same today after the fall of the Assad regime? What are you hearing from Syrians? Are they even interested in peace with Israel?
The people are.
Really?
We need to separate the people from this government that's been there for a month now. We cannot just say, oh, there's a new reality, there's this new government that is linked to Turkey, linked to Qatar. We cannot operate and this is going back to what I was saying with Hashpa'a operations. Like, how do you insert your narrative into the discourse in the region?
Yeah.
How do you say, okay, well, Israel can be a great partner, a great trade partner. Syria is an agrarian country. Israel has amazing agricultural technology, and it's a great market for products. So this is the kind of thinking you need to present. Now, the Syrian people have been banned from even thinking about Israel the past 55 years. Now there is an opportunity to change that. As the people ejected the Assad regime, why not think about ejecting his ideology as well? And the way he used the conflict inside of Israel, with the Palestinians, to benefit his own dictatorship and to, maintain a stronger grip on the people. And unfortunately, what we always say in the region, fighting Israel to the last Palestinian. And that ideology needs to also be understood, dissected, because now you have the ability to converse about it openly and really understand, people deserve to understand why they hate something. Not just be told to hate something and we'll punish you if you do not hate something.
Yeah.
It's, you understand how unfair that is? Not only to Israel, but to the people of Syria.
Who are very educated people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now they need to better understand but again, Sarah, 55 years. We don't expect things to change in a month or two. However, positive, clear, sustained Israeli messaging, from the government, from the non-governmental community, from the people, will help the Syrian people understand the reality of what the relationship could be or should be.
Some Israeli critics argue that extending a message of peace to Syria means granting legitimization to al-Jolani, who has yet to reveal his true colors. It's true. We don't know yet if he's put his jihadi past behind him. What do you say to that?
Governments come and go. People remain.
So you're saying let's do it the other way around, whereas Israel has cold peace with Egypt.
Let's message that we want. The people in Israel want peace with the people of Syria. And remember, this is not the Assad regime anymore. You see activity on the street level in Syria. The Syrian people. We've noticed it over the past few weeks. The new government would propose something, would announce something, then the people will get irritated and that gets undone. So now, for the first time, the street has weight in Syria and has influence in Syria. So there is no shame in dealing with the street, but also that this is important, Sarah. This is what I call influence operations. Because if you can influence the street or that government, are they not less likely to go to the jihadi route if they see, an opportunity of a future with Israel?
So that's my next question is, what's the alternative if Israel doesn't extend a message of peace? Is it pushing Syria further into the arms of Turkey, Qatar?
Absolutely.
Back into the arms of Iran?
Absolutely. One of the things we talked about, and this is public now because it's published in Israel Hayam, one of the ideas that we talked about here was, why doesn't Israel send fuel as aid to the Syrian people, heating fuel for the winter?
Yeah.
With a simple message like, hey, our common enemy, Iran, used to provide your government with fuel that used to steal half of and distribute, maybe a bit of. Well, congratulations on ejecting Iran. this is our, our way of helping the Syrian people go through this tough winter. And we hope for peace in the future. These small gestures matter a lot. In a time where, there's a lot of conferences about Syria, but aid is yet to flow.
In your meetings with Israeli ministers at the Knesset, when you raised this idea of extending peace to Syria through, economic, economic aid, trade, what were the reactions?
There's definitely interest. There are two issues. Obviously, Gaza right now and the deal in Gaza cast a heavy shadow over everything else. So the timing, while it's important for Syria, it's complicated, and it's complicated politically. And as you've mentioned, there's a whole political aspect of it. How do you message it not only externally but also internally to people that are, the Israeli people are genuinely concerned about Jolani or Mr. Ahmad Shara and what his next move will look like. There's genuine fear because it's unfortunate, Syria is a place where it's always been either you're with the state or you're, you have more of a religious approach to governance. Right. There are no there was never civil society or, free political parties or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that anti-Semitism is shared by these two sides. And which makes it very tough to just go and trust blindly with this new change. That said, I think there's an opportunity. The opportunity is too big to ignore, let's put it that way. Because if peace with Syria is achievable, that's a major game changer for the whole region, not only for Israel. The whole region will turn a corner toward a more prosperous and better future.
Hazem, I have one last very important question for you. Who does it better, Israelis or Syrians, when it comes to shawarma?
Woof. Tough one. See, that's another thing that, actually, this is a very important question because this is one of the biggest, surprisingly, campaigns against Israel. Oh, look, Israelis...
The cultural appropriation.
Stole the food.
Yeah.
Okay, let's set the record straight. No food was stolen. You come to Israel and you meet the Syrian Jewish people that brought their
Syrian
dishes.
Jews, Iraqi Jews,
Iraqi,
Moroccan
Yemenis.
Jews, Yemenite Jews.
I'll be honest, go up to the Shuk, Yehuda Shuk. There's Joni Kubaneh. You know the place.
Yeah.
The guy literally looks a lot. It's like a doppelganger for the Houthi. the leader of the Houthis. No, he's Yemeni. The Yemenis have that unique look to them that you can tell. That food was brought, and there are schnitzels. There's a lot of food from a lot of places. There's
it's a melting
Domino's.
pot.
There's not Domino's pizzas and burgers are a thing because of American Jews that came here. Yeah, and non-Jews, by the way. Israel is a lot more diverse than anybody can imagine. So no, this is what makes Israel so interesting. That culture and. It's not one color, not politically, not socially. There's always that discourse and even friction in some places.
Yeah.
So
100%. I mean, if there's one thing about the Jews is that we can't agree on anything.
Let me touch on one thing with the shawarma. Size does matter. The laffa here is like 5 pounds.
Yeah.
It's a meal for a group. I first night here, I ordered a shawarma laffa. I'm like, it's just massive.
Well, it's like, when you went to college in the U.S. and there was like the freshman 15.
Yeah.
It's like, you gain 15 pounds just from that first year in college. There's the Israel 15.
Yeah. Yeah. Even though we were just talking about this, you walk everywhere in Jerusalem. It's a small city. It's all uphill or downhill. It's a very hilly place.
Yeah.
But you still find a way to gain a few pounds, and for a good cause.
For a good cause. Yeah, always for a good cause. Hazem Algabra, it was amazing having you here in studio. Thank you very much for joining
Appreciate
me.
it.
And
Thank you.
we can't wait to have you back in Jerusalem again.
Thank you. Thank you.